Sorry, it started raining on my phone screen. Yeah. So I mean, Michel Foucault was a pedophile and believed that reality was like a subjective hallucination. So I believe in an objective reality. So that was the worst example I could have made. That was a failure on my part, and I apologize. Anyways, so you're basically into Jean-Paul Sartre with more mental gymnastics. I don't know who that is. Life is pointless and death is an absurdity. I mean, I think death kind of is an absurdity. I don't think life is necessarily pointless. Anyways, a French existentialist from the 20th century, writer of Nausea. I don't think it's pointless. I believe cosmically, maybe it is, but I believe it's down to us. I believe it's down to us to make our own point and sharpen our blades and ride into a metaphorical or proverbial battle. Read Being and Nothingness by Sartre. All right. And then I definitely like idealism, especially some of the stuff from Plato, like the epistemology of the realm of ideals and things like that, and how it correlates with traditions of animism. Actually, you know what? I'm in the middle of reading a book right now, but I can put that as the next thing I read. Thank you for the recommendation. I'm trying to be friendly, and that's not just me trying to be friendly. I will read that as my next book. I am bound by honor and oath, and he gave me a little salute. You definitely are an idealist, considering how you claim to be a vampire, while you're nothing more than a wounded child who never grew up from the age of 13, which also happens, which happens to be the agent in which you claimed to have started practicing this worldview. I claim to have had my awakening at 16. I'm not sure what he's referring to. Another thing, you also claim to have a hate for monkeys with tails. Those are simply called monkeys, those simply called monkeys. Monkeys without a tail is actually an ape. Yeah, but the thing is, I know that that's a dumb thing for me to say, but there's going to be someone that's even dumber that's going to be like, oh, you don't like monkeys with tails, but you're fine with apes. What do apes have to do with this? And then I'll have to explain that they're monkeys without tails. So that's why I said it, because that's not. This isn't my first rodeo. Anyways, Oh, for sure. I'm definitely an idealist. I believe in anti-material virtues, among other things. I like the three fathers of Stoicism, and I like pessimistic philosophy and ancient Roman philosophy, along with Eastern concepts like Vedanta and forms of pantheism. All right. Have you actually studied Taoism? No, not really. Or are you just looking through New Age sources by Western authors? All right, and I address this. I mean, for sure, I've had a rough upbringing, and therapy has definitely been helping, and I'd like to become the father I never had for my children when I have them. But I don't think my psychic vampirism has much to do with my trauma, as it is just something that we are born with. I believe that. I was a psychic vampire inside the womb, or rather, a disconnected. Thank you for giving me that term, Joseph. Which is a more neutral, less outrageous term than vampire. But to say I never grew up is kind of a little mean for no reason. I work 2 jobs and have my own apartment, and I'm providing for my fiancée so she doesn't have to work. I think I'm doing pretty good, yeah, all things considered. All right. And are you just looking through New Age sources supplied by Western authors? I'd say 20% of my practice is what I've read, and the rest of it is channeled through spiritual ability and discipline. And schizophrenia, by the way, is just so you know, is an involuntary psychosis in disconnection from reality and an inability to process reality. I only have experiences if I want them and if I initiate them, and I can end them at any point. That's true for the most part, except for when there's actually something that is awry in the night. But then that's just as simple as putting up a ward or whatever. But anyways, at the end of the day, I do have control over the situation. Even if I don't, I take control of it. through ritualistic means that don't rely on me waiting for my psychosis to end. Yeah. Yes, I know monkeys without a tail are apes. That's just more my sense of humor, mate. And I think we have a general misunderstanding of what you think I mean by a vampire and what I mean by a vampire. So 20% reading and 80% making it up as you go. And no, it's not mean to say that you never really grew up. A lot of people, even myself, have an aspect of ourselves that never really grew up. It's part of us that stays stunted. So here's the thing: knows nothing about me, assumes that there's a part of me that's mentally stunted. I'm sure there is, right? And then I'm saying he's projecting, and then he's basically saying that I'm just not. And then he says that there is something within him, and he's using that as a source of reference for analyzing me. So right here, he just confesses that he's projecting. So yeah, just thought I'd say that. It's not an attack, it's just an observation. It's a part of us that stays stunted until we learn to allow it to come free from whatever is stunting its growth. Psychiatrists term as the inner child, or psychic vampirism. No. But yes, I don't think vampirism on a spiritual level, as a state of metaphysics and spirituality, has much to do with being mentally stunted. And 20%, in that 20% you read about spiritualism and metaphysics, is basically made up by those that have channeled that kind of point of, or channeled it. And that's kind of the point of making a religion or spirituality, by writing your spiritual, perennial, mystical experiences down. So if I based 100% of it off of reading it, then I would be basing it off of something that someone else channeled, and by your logic, that person would be crazy. But I would be less crazy by simply believing in what someone else came up with. But if all of this stuff were real, and you and me were just as capable of experiencing it, then channeling it and testing it out to see if it works, and then comparing it with other people's experiences, just becomes another mundane and even interesting and engaging part of life, you know? I don't think it should necessarily be a pissing contest between you and me. I don't want to be your enemy. I'd like to be your friend. I know you have your own preconceived notions about me and think I'm an idiot. And maybe I am, but I'm willing to be open to the idea that that's true. I would just wish that you would approach this in good faith, and that we could have a more and could be more courteous to each other. Oh, it's raining. It's raining. Love that. Alrighty. I think you misunderstood me. I'll give you a little background about myself. I'm one of the atheists that I'm sure you hate a lot. However, I think all religion is based on humanity's attempt at trying to explain what cannot be explained, coupled with mental illnesses and delusion. 20% of your understanding of vampire is based on whatever books you may have read on energy work. However, to me, energy work is completely bullshit because there is no scientific evidence to back it up. So that's an opinion. The rest of your understanding, 80%, is what you claim to have channeled. How do you verify this with empirical evidence? I think I give a decent response. I don't have a hatred for atheists. I have plenty of friends that are atheists that I love and care about. But your opinion that it's based on humanity's attempt at trying to understand what cannot be explained is completely valid. I think, yes, a lot of the times mental illness comes into play, and I try to get those people help, because I think it's hard to articulate myself without voice messaging. So I'll probably voice message this. But I try to encourage people to get mental help before they get into spiritual experiences, and the same thing before they make drastic physical decisions over their lives. So I guess I didn't respond to that one properly. That's a missed opportunity. Oh well. If your philosophy has nothing to empirical to base itself upon, then it stops being a philosophy because it has no grounding. I mean, a lot of philosophies that qualify, even by secular trains of thought, as philosophy, don't have empirical grounding. I mean, I don't know. I like Schopenhauer's approach, where it's just you sit down and think in ways that other people hadn't thought before, right? It's not just about reading, or rather science is breaking down the world or whatever, through what we've collectively learned of it, and then trying to educate yourself as much as possible, and then having a vague notion of the world, not based off of necessarily observation, but collective trial and error and observation of other people. Whereas I think in spirituality, you can just kind of look at the world, make certain conclusions that affect your own personal life without coming into conflict with science. Anyways, all right, where were we? No grounding. Good stuff. All right. Well, then, this just comes down to a matter of an atheist versus someone that believes in a religion, and that faith might be harmful if it is circular in its logic and has no proof. And, he agrees with me. There. I've seen so many people that proclaim they were unicorns in the astral plane, trapped in a human body. I mean, that's valid. I'm sure there are. I mean, I do believe there are astral unicorns, and I do believe any spirit can incarnate into a human body. Though I feel like a unicorn spirit would incarnate into a horse's body or a rhino's, because it'd probably be more familiar. But who knows? I don't know. I feel like this is less about me believing in a spiritual state of being, and just in general, a bigger thing about being a skeptic and trying to be more rational. Yes, okay. Well, now we establish an understanding. Okay, now that I know where you're coming from, it's easier to have this conversation. Rationality is key. When I saw your video, I noticed how you were they were condemning you because they felt like your own description of yourself in your belief lacked rationality. I mean, I don't think it lacked any less rationality than anyone else that believes in practicing the occult. Well, the occult can be broken down to mental science. Well, then why not get into therapy? If it's all just esoteric therapy and brain science, there's modern day brain science. Why are you engaging in something that is outdated? But yeah, and that's why I joined, because I thought it's an occult server. Apparently it was not. Yeah. Alrighty. However, it's up to you to find lack of rationality. However, it's up to you to find a rational way of describing your philosophy rather than describing what you yourself or what you believe yourself to actually be. For example, claiming to be an astral vampire. Firstly, the term vampire referring to something parasitic. In what way would you actually be a parasite? And what exactly are you trying to define as energy? So he's acting in good faith. This is promising. This is, why you should hold on, and not act the way your gut is telling you to act, where you just be like, no, we're not in kindergarten. Let's persist, right? Or maybe I'm just a masochist. So this is my audio response. And sorry if cars are driving by and it's raining and there's wind. Hopefully this audio comes through. But this is what I said to him.
Okay, so how do I put this? Yeah, okay, I see. So there's really no point in even explaining the vampiric metaphysics and spirituality, because again, this isn't an argument over that, because then it would just be like me being a Catholic trying to explain to you, well, this is what I actually mean by divine transubstantiation in the Eucharist. You probably don't want to hear about that. So me even but I will say it has nothing to do with the pop culture vampire, and it is its own type of theological whatever. But yeah, how do I put this? So my belief in the mercurial, I believe mental health is the most paramount thing, and I completely disconnect myself from spiritualists that are against mental health. I do believe, yes, there is a side of reality that cannot be conventionally proven, that you probably think is just pointless to believe in, like someone's staring at a wall, and while someone's like, oh no, I'm staring at a different world, when you're just seeing them stare at a wall. I get that, and from your point of view, that is concerning, right? Maybe there's something wrong with them, but I will say to people that are like depressed, have trauma, have something that's going on, you need mental health or mental help, therapy, things like that, maybe some EMDR. But a lot of these people will be like, no, I'm just going to go work out. Therapy's easy, but really hitting the gym and, doing all this stuff is harder. It's something that I have to build on. And then they shoot themselves. And then these people channel gnosis, do advanced rituals. You're like, therapy's easy, but doing this demonic ascension ritual, and then they shoot themselves in the head or whatever, because they're literally schizophrenic. And the demons told them to. And I'm like, oh my God, like the humanity, and I'm against that. I'll say to people, I believe that the spiritual and the material are equal to each other. They're two sides of the same coin. And if you have the physical right leg cut off, you can, and you can't have like a physical good life. You can't go to the gym. You can't join the army or run a marathon, whatever. Then but you can also have a spiritual practice, and you could even learn to walk with a prosthetic. And same thing spiritually. If you don't have a soul, or your psychic abilities are stunted and you can't really do magic or have divine mystical experiences, you can still live a good, healthy way of life. But if your head is cut off, even if you have two pristine legs, in this kind of metaphor analogy, your legs are useless. So I'll say to people, no, working out is easier than getting therapy. Doing an advanced demonic ritual is easier than getting therapy, because if that weren't the case, then, you would be immediately be jumping into therapy if those were the harder options, So there are people that will have these just things where it's like, okay, this sounds interesting. This sounds like a very potent experience, but what does it do to help you, right? And that's how I discern the difference between the schizophrenic and the what I find to be useful gnosis, because my vampirism helps me, with my anxiety, with my depression, and in my opinion has helped other people. But I can't prove that. That's only something that me and them believe. But it's made me a more productive person. It's even if it's all a placebo, I'm willing to entertain the idea that it's a mental thing or whatever. Like maybe, how people do rituals because they believe it helps mental health. I believe my vampirism has helped me. What I've channeled about my vampirism has helped me make sense of the world, even if it's not something that's empirical, something that can be proven. It's helped me on an individual live a better way of life, and has helped me do right by those I care about. But I agree, there are a lot of people that are suffering in this world, and there are fucking gurus and spiritual crooks that just take advantage of people that are lost. I've had people come to me because they hear what I'm teaching, and they're like, can you teach me this? Can you fix my life? Can you do this? I'll give you money. And I'm like, oh my God, no. You went through a lot, and vampirism is not going to help you. You need help. You need, even if you don't have the strength, you need someone that will sit down and listen to you. You need help. It takes a village. You can't walk this life alone. We're not meant to live alone. It's just like, don't go to the gym if the problem isn't in your body, but it's in your mind, right? The right tool for the right job. So I get what you're saying. I'm gonna have to read what you sent, but I get it, and I understand where you're coming from. And I thought that you were just trying to insult me, but I think this comes from a place of empathy, and you're just genuinely concerned for my well-being. I get that, and I fully respect you. I'm not going to post a video complaining about our interaction or whatever. I get what you're trying to say, and I understand why you're coming from your perspective.
Alrighty. I had a hard time articulating myself, so I sent a voice message. I'm hoping that can clear any misunderstanding and help us get off on a new foot. It's not an attack or anything aggressive. I'll let you listen to that, and then we can continue, because I feel like this could actually be a meaningful conversation. I'm listening to what you're saying right now, and yes, I was talking to another person who genuinely wanted validation for his mental illness being a spiritual experience, as do we all. The amount of people I know that are like, I believe I'm a reincarnated bodhisattva meant to help humanity. And these people still live with their parents, they do drugs, and I'm like, you could be a bodhisattva, right? But you'll never actually know if your brain is broken, right? and you take your own delusions as gnosis. Whereas if you actually got help, maybe medication, then you could channel that and be like, no, I am actually a bodhisattva, right? I know actually 5 people that have claimed that, and only one of them I'm convinced maybe that's true, but they refuse to get mental help, so whatever. And he wanted to avoid therapy because he hated the label. Yeah, I avoided, getting proper help for my autism, as I was like, I don't want to be considered autistic, but I also wanted to join the army, so I thought I could hide it. But anyways, there's no hiding that. Anyways, I'm ardently against that thinking. That's reasonable. I hope this voice message curbs your expectations. I'm not bothered by you not believing in what I am, and I am not seeking validation. Yeah, this channel's not about seeking validation, right? I know I make videos being like, we're the victims. I mean, we've been victimized, but I mean, the point of my videos are to help people that are psychic vampires to not be the victim and to, be comfortable with what they are and integrate into the world and know their purpose and be at peace with themselves. And then people that are not psychic vampires, for them to find peace within themselves. Because I think that's what psychic vampirism is. It's about being at peace with your nature, just as any other state of being should be about being at peace with your nature. Anyways, I hope this message, blah, blah, blah. I understand, no worries. Heart. I believe mental health is more important than any physical or spiritual decision, and that the best spiritual results and the best physical results are from mental health. And neglecting mental health and making a physical or spiritual decision actually destroys mental health and destroys the physical and the spiritual. Yeah, absolutely. Mercurial takes the height of astral and material. Right, however, I still separate spirituality with the physical because the spiritual cannot be proven factually. Now, what exactly do you call vampirism in your case? Some people call it draining energy, while others try to mimic what they see on TV and risk bloodborne infections. And I also apologize for the aggressive introduction. Okay, you know what? I was waiting for the end of our conversation for him to apologize, and I completely overlooked that he did apologize, so thank you for that. All right. If I explain it, even knowing that it could be completely mental or even a delusion, can you listen in good faith, even though I can't empirically prove anything, just so the context of what I personally think it is established before we move forward? And again, I'm open to the idea that maybe it's mental or maybe I'm just misguided. I don't believe I'm misguided, but you know what? These people are so certain of themselves. You gotta make concessions, right? It's terrible because they won't make those concessions for you, but you got to make that, maybe they'll allow themselves to be vulnerable, and then you strike them and kill. No, I'm joking. Don't do that. Alrighty, where was I in this? Maybe I'm just misguided. And I don't believe vampirism or any form of spiritual practice or physical exercise is a substitute for mental health. And I don't want to seem like I'm preaching either, because it's probably going to seem that way or seem like that. I can listen without judgment. It's all about understanding. I'll voice message because it's easier for me. Sorry if that's annoying. I know some people don't like that. I get you're completely deep into it. It's not annoying at all. Do what's easier for you. All right. And then this is my recording.
Where do I even begin? I believe that, I've been trying to disassociate from the term psychic vampirism because Anton LaVey coined that, and now it's an actual medical term for like narcissism and cluster B and actual like abusive behavior. So I've been trying to not do that. It's a great term. I wish we would have coined that or whatever. And I believe there's a few things. There is what people in my circles would call psychic vampirism, which we believe is a state of being that we have always been. Sympathetic vampirism, an average person that is not a psychic vampire that learns the same methods. And then I don't have a term for the other one. It's like Order of the Nine Angles, Dracon Covenant, Temple of Blood type of edgy, where these people, it's not necessarily them already being a part of a state of being or developing a practice. It's them trying to redefine their state of being. They might be a rapist, a pedophile, a cannibal, something bad, or something's wrong with them. Maybe they like to steal money and embezzle, cheat people, lie, and they try to find a religion to justify their own antisocial behavior, and thus it becomes less of a practice and a really bad, toxic state of being. And I'm really against them. In my beliefs, I'm pro-cosmic. I believe reality is a cradle, a refuge, and they believe it's a prison. So that puts me at odds with them. But yeah, so to explain what I personally believe it is I believe, and this is so new age and generic, you can criticize me for that, but I believe that, and I'm going to be taken from Hinduism, Norse, Gnosticism, all sorts of things, right? So new agey, I guess. That's a fair criticism. But I believe there is one reality. We're all connected. There's no monotheism. I believe the one God is Source, Brahman, or the monad, and that it's omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, whatever, and that it's not self-aware. I believe self-awareness comes from mortal beings living in entropy and surviving, and different adaptations and mental traits being developed, and different levels of species self-awareness. And I also believe that on a spiritual level, that spiritual life evolves in their realm. But anyways, I don't believe that I'm actually undead, like in the way people think I think, or the way people think that I think it is, right? No, not at all. So basically, the idea is that there is nothing outside of Brahman, that all of reality, the spirit world, the physical world, all of that is an extension of Source. Some people call it the grand infinity, whatever. Reality itself as God. And that nothing can be separate, at least physically. And typically within most forms of light working and right hand path metaphysics, spiritually, nothing can be separate, right? And I think this is where the religious people get offended by the notion of my type of vampirism, because it undermines all of their metaphysics and seems like heresy. But anyways, so the belief is that we are all connected to Source, and outside of Source is Gagunda Gap, the void, Kali, whatever you want to call it, nothingness. And it's not to say that energy can be, it's not to contradict energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but only transformed. It's not to say that. It's to say that in the void, nothing exists, and nothing can not exist in nothing. So the idea is if something were to leave Source, it would dissolve. It would have never had ever existed to begin with, because energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It's just always there. So if it goes into the void, it's to say that it's deleted from past, present, and future. So not really destroyed, it just never existed, right? And the kind of belief in what I'm talking about is that and this is a contradiction within spiritual logic. So, even by my own logic, it is completely nonsensical, which is why it puts us at odds with pagans, witches, all sorts of religious people, even more mainstream religions that are like conservative Hinduism. But the idea is that if a spirit, or a soul rather, is disconnected from Source or whatever, it starts to dissolve, because nothing can exist outside of Source. But that the soul or the spirit seeks to survive, and I guess this would be to attribute life, living quality, to what a materialist or an atheist would say is a more non-living reality. It's just life can exist within it, but yeah. So I'm already assuming that there's a living quality and interest in self-preservation, right? And the idea is that because things are grounded in Source, spirits that evolve from the soul, these types of spiritual, non-materialistic beings, they feed on food the same way we do physically. And this is to believe that the spirit realm is the realm of the conceptual, and the physical world is the reflection of the conceptual in material form. And that basically there is always a counterpart to everything in the physical world and the spiritual, and vice versa. And that basically spirits will feed on elemental energy, spiritual earth, air, water, and fire, right? And they digest it, and it has the proverbial lead and gold in it, and they can chew on it and slowly digest it spiritually. That's what the chakras are for, in my personal belief, to filter elemental energy, to have the root chakra dispel the lead, and to have the gold be absorbed in the spirit, or whatever. And this kind of idea that it's like a cow that can afford to eat multiple fields worth of grass because it's not going to die anytime soon. It has a slow metabolism. It doesn't have complex hunting tactics or higher intellect or whatever. It just, all it does is eat, so it can afford to do that, and it has 4 stomachs worth, compared to a wolf or a fox or a small animal that is an obligate carnivore that has a high metabolism, in which its metabolism will burn out and it will die before it can eat a full field's worth of grass. It might be oxalate sensitive because it can't eat this spiritual field, right? Or in this analogy, a literal field. And so the animal starts to, starve to death or vomit it up. Even if it can, eat all of that field's worth of grass, its stomach explodes. So it just, hold on.
All right. Now, O9A are just idiots trying to excuse their compulsive criminality. I disagree. Just because a lot of people that get into the O9A are not criminals and they get indoctrinated and they believe that their compulsive criminality and compulsive counterculture and engagement with taboos literally destabilizes the fabric of reality, right? And then while they're doing, compulsive criminality, they are also simultaneously trying to excuse their compulsive criminality through their theology. So it's like the chicken and the egg argument. Anyways, you would also benefit from studying Taoism. The Tao is also not aware of itself, or aware that it's self-aware. Your redefinition of undead is similar to the Orthodox Shima monks who claim death to the world when they cloister themselves. And your description of unity also seems similar to the Sufi understanding of unity of being. As your description of energy, it changes state. All right. I'm going to play this next one. Oh. Nope.
Then it just comes down to basic math, right? The energy of the predator that it needs, it can't burn energy, it has an energy deficit, so it can't burn the energy to break down an entire field's worth of grass or multiple fields worth of grass. Whereas the cow has all of the field's worth of nutrients already in its muscle or its blood, right? Where the vampirism comes into play is the idea that, like any soul, or whatever, assuming souls are real, right? Hypothetically, I guess. I'm trying to approach this more fairly from your point of view. If this fantasy soul existed, if it were disconnected from source, right? Even if it was participating in source, it's disconnected. So it's not a part of source. It might be participating, but it's not a part of it. So it is being unwritten, right? Because nothing should exist outside of source. So its body, its spiritual body, is fighting against its own entropy, its own dissolution. So it needs energy to temporarily maintain its own existence, unlike anything else that is connected to source, any other spirit or soul. So it can't break down the elemental energy of earth, air, fire, and water and all that. It can't do that. And it will dissolve into the void before it can do that. So basically, the idea is that vital energy is the gold form of spiritual earth, air, fire, and water, right? So if we can't, burn the energy to dispel that lead from the elemental energy, then because we're already burning energy trying not to dissolve, then that's where the metabolism kind of thing comes into mind. So we absorb spiritual vital energy, or prana, from those average everyday people that walking around, they absorb it from the trees, the earth, the air, even fire, right? And just as how blood is oxygen, air, iron, earth, fire, thermal heat, water, literally water. Spiritually, that's what vital energy is, right? It's the purified, refined type of thing, right? Just as how you can't physically eat iron, you have to eat it from a plant or an animal that ate the plant. And the iron's concentrated in the meat, or kind of sort of concentrated in the plant, if that makes sense. So the idea is that the spiritual vampire will die. And what's the result of this not feeding? An atheist death. Assuming that there is an afterlife, a psychic vampire, with, not Anton LaVey's logic, but, what I'm calling vampirism, the vampire would basically cease to exist. There would be no life after death. After this physical life, if I didn't feed within my belief, assuming this is true, when I die, that's it. There's nothing. There was just this life, and then I'm a part of what I was before. Whereas everyone else, the idea is they either reincarnate or have an afterlife. But I don't, right? I don't have that luxury if I don't feed, right? They're always going to feed on their environment. So the idea is that we take this spiritual blood, this prana, and we put it within our chakras. We get the already processed gold. And this temporarily puts a pause on us being sent into Gagunda Gap, or the void. It allows us to persist. So where's the whole metaphor of calling ourselves the vampire come from? Well, you look at mythology and pop culture, and you see a creature that physically, in fantasy, exists in a similar way. It needs blood in order to persist, right? So we take that metaphor, we use that as a metaphor, and we call ourselves a vampire or whatever, or even a werewolf, right? Because we believe spiritually we can transform and do freak shit. But the vampire is the more kind of sensical metaphor, and we just simply use it as a metaphor. We don't believe we're Dracula, right? But where does the undead part come from? So to call ourselves undead isn't to say, oh, well, we're literally zombies, we're literally undead. It's more to say that if most beings can create their own vital energy from just being connected to reality. If a soul loses its ability to connect to reality or the earth and produce its own vital energy, and it's actively withering away, like it's dying, and it can only get vital energy from people that already have it, they're already connected, what would you call that other than undead? To be disconnected and no longer able to be a part of spiritual life the same way everyone and any other thing is, right? So we take the metaphor of undead because we are kind of spiritually undead if any of this is real. So that's where that comes from. That's why we call ourselves vampires. It's much more simpler and less kind of like crazy in terms of pop culture, but then again, it is a matter of faith. It cannot be empirically proven. I believe it's a detriment to me if I don't feed, but that doesn't make it true, and I understand your perspective, right? And I will tell people that are like, I want to be a psychic vampire because I was molested or I was traumatized or whatever, and I'm like, no. For me, I'm at a good place in my life, and even when I was in a bad place, I still consider myself a vampire, but for me, it's something in addition to what I already have to deal with. My life, this life, I still have to do all the normal human things. I have to go to work. I have to interact with people. I have to get therapy. I have to pay my taxes. It's not an escape from that, and I know a lot of people think it is, and there are a lot of people that, since our critics think it's an escape, those that actually want to escape will pursue it, and I always turn those people away. I'm like, no, let's say it's real, right? If you believe that you can become a vampire, I believe it's possible, but it's not desirable. If you're not satisfied with your own basic existence as what I would call an elemental vampire or a connected, whereas I'd call myself a disconnected, then if you're not satisfied being the proverbial cow or the connected or the elemental vampire, if you're not satisfied as a herbivore, if you're not satisfied as a bull, you're not going to be satisfied as a wolf. You're not going to be satisfied as a jaguar or some type of predator. You're just exchanging one form of existence that you have not found a way to be satisfied with for another that you will learn that you will not be satisfied with, right? Because at the end of the day, whether a vampire or not a vampire, your problem is that you cannot contend with yourself in your own state of being. So I turn those people away, because if you're not at peace with yourself, why would you be at peace being a vampire, the spiritual vampire, right? So that's the end of that, right? I don't think there's any more to add to that. I'll just read what you're typing.
Alrighty. That's my last point. I'm going to read what you're typing and wait for you to finish. The unity of being, I'm not familiar with that, but I've heard similar things. Now this, I think, is where his expectations are curved. This little possum thing, I think he's like thinking, oh, this guy's not completely a retard. Maybe a little. Anyways, yes, I hate them. This is my most basic response. All right, he's responding to the voice messages, the two. A lot of people believe in anything as an escape because they want the illusion of power to fight against the memory of what traumatized them, like a form of post-traumatic embitterment disorder. That goes back to the whole notion of people being at peace with themselves first. But the question about feeding, to me, energy is strictly something that follows the laws of thermodynamics and physics. Too many New Agers believe energy to be everything, but what it actually is. They, I don't know how to pronounce that. Is that Romanian? They call emotions energy, or they call concepts like prana and koi, like koigon, energy, or they call ghost energy. It is. Yeah, anyways, some people even call their arousal as sexual energy, focusing too much on the sexual because they define their entire life around that sphere of things. And doing that goes against my philosophy, because people can choose to be much more than a mere obsession. I mean, I agree with that last part, and I think most of that I agree with. But the part where he's like arousal is sexual energy, focusing too much on the sexual because they define their entire life around that sphere of things. I think if you were a sacral vampire, like a daughter or son of Lilith, that's going to happen. You're going to live a life of obsession, even though you could be so much more, you know? But yeah, no, I agree. There are people that don't have to, and they just do that anyway. So I think as above, so below. I think it can just be a mentally ill or unwise choice in one's own life based off of sometimes environmental circumstances or personal initiative, and not a good form of initiative, but initiative. Or sometimes it can actually just be a spiritual thing, but that's neither here nor there. All right. I think sexual arousal is definitely its own scientific, biological thing. I do believe there is such a thing as sexual energy, and I think they affect each other, but I think there are things that are just simply physical, biological phenomena, if that makes sense. And I think it's better to engage with science and things like that for curing any type of worldly thing. And then when you actually run out of options, and all of that, then I think spiritualism could be a good thing to consider. Most people, when they say they are possessed, I assume something else is going on. But yes, I do believe in possession. But it's good to see that we're having civil discourse. I thought this conversation was just going to be another depressing encounter. But I'm glad I was wrong, right? And on some part, if you don't want those kind of encounters, you gotta be a little bit of a masochist. You got to take that cock and ball torture, you know? And if you've been dealing with it for 8 years like me, rather than being like, I'm going to be perpetually miserable, if they give you if you can, you know, it's like this, right? I believe in the golden rule. Cars. I believe in the golden rule, but I also kind of believe in the satanic rule, right? Golden rule, treat other people the way you want to be treated. And then on another level, treat them the way they treat you. I think initially you should treat other people the way you want to be treated, right? That's how we start conversations. That's how we have civilizational order. Then if they spit on you, then you treat them the way they treat you. I think that's fair. I think that, I'm more towards the satanic one, but the former is, I think, preferable, because sometimes you have to take that initiative, and it's not always easy. But, in general, you're never going to have any type of, meaningful interaction with people if you don't at least attempt to approach things with some level of empathy and understanding. But anyways, I digress. And that's where you and I differ, because there would have to be substantial proof that a person is indeed possessed by something that itself can't be proven to exist. What about, children floating and, vomiting pea soup, or people that have no formal education speaking in archaic dead languages, or that's the funny thing. There is a cognitive dissonance, because there was that one paranormal haunting, I think, in London, and there have been there's so much scientifically recorded phenomena of poltergeist and violent supernatural activity that has been proven time and time again not to be altered. Multiple witnesses, like a police crew, that are like, nope, fuck that, trying to find strings, trying to find hidden mechanisms. And there's actually like scientifically observable, maybe not proof, but evidence that there is actually, the astral does exist. And because that's so far out there, even if it's done within scientific means, these skeptics are still going to go, no, that's not true. And then they themselves prove that they're not actually any different than a religious zealot. There is plenty of things like that. And I have a few atheist friends that are hardcore skeptics. I have a few atheist friends that are hardcore skeptics that will... Oh, these cars are great. That will never, ever agree with anything I believe. However, there are a few of them that are like, oh, yeah, no, I mean, it annoys me that we try to be grounded, rational, try to look for empirical evidence. And then when things like this do happen, we just ignore it with cognitive dissonance. We're not supposed to be the ones with cognitive dissonance. Religious people like you are supposed to be. And I'm like, oh, well, but, and they're like, but I think it's explainable. There's might be something involving dark matter or quantum reality, or maybe it's all a programming and there's a glitch in the programming, and they try to explain it away. And I'm like, honestly, that's more of a meaningful explanation for anomalies. You could just be like, this is an anomaly, and this is not anything that we can actually understand right now, but it is observable through the scientific method, and one day we will, but we shouldn't dismiss it, right? So it doesn't matter if you had Jesus Christ teleport and then cure a blind man in front of these people, right? I mean, if you wanted to actually be a skeptic, you could look at that and be like, well, there's no way we can understand how this guy just teleported and healed this person, but we will one day. But it's not because he's the Messiah, right? Until we have empirical proof he's the Messiah, even if the Messiah gave them empirical proof. But still, that's much more better than like, oh, it didn't happen. If a demon just teleported and slapped some of these people in the face, they'd be like, oh, that was the wind, right? So I find myself in this position to where, spiritual experiences can actually, there is a good argument for using the scientific method or getting certain spiritual experiences that just an overwhelming majority. But it's hard because, when they'll be like, oh, well, this is just mass hysteria or a collective delusion, which that does happen, weirdly enough, right? That is weird. That might be itself its own paranormal phenomena, or just brains syncing in the same hormonal pheromonic, I don't even know, but yeah, so I don't know, it is weird because there are cases where there are just strange things that happen, like that one, what was it, the guy, what was his name, well, not I mean, it was Pope Francis, but before he took the name Pope Francis, in his church they put the Eucharist bread in the Eucharist, and they found that there was like a little red substance developing, right? And then they sent it out to multiple labs, not non-religious people, just regular scientists, and just to verify what it is. And all of them were angry and upset because they thought the Catholic Church was doing something really illegal, right? And maybe they were, because it's the Catholic Church, and I think if anyone was going to do something very fucked up, it would be that. But they found out that this was a sample of a human heart that endured a level of physiological torture that is comparable to like crucifixion, right? And that was one of those things where it's like, this was scientifically proven to have happened. What does it mean? I don't know. I'm not saying you should become Catholic, because I'm not. But it's hard, because sometimes you can actually have observable paranormal things. And I think a lot of this skeptic logic becomes more of a religion, ironically enough. But let me continue. Yes, I don't think I'm using it as a form of escapism, but maybe I am. Who knows? But I have tried to engage with people the best I can, and in the best good faith I can, despite disagreements, even though it's hard, and the amount of general abuse from either atheistic or religious people or other types of spiritualists can be overwhelming. I do think your initial message towards me was a little unfair and not productive, and despite me wanting to lash out, I had to take a step back and realize that I am an adult, and I had to first understand things from your perspective, and I get why your reaction and response was initially the way it was. But I'm glad we can at least disagree in a more positive way without attacking each other. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Right. But just don't take a vetting channel to heart, because servers often attract people of certain demographics. Perhaps starting your own Discord server and advertising it on Discord could draw in a better crowd that you could vet. I mean, fuck, I don't want to run a Discord server. Do you? I'm speaking to the viewer. Anyways, regardless, I appreciate the conversation. If you approve, I would like to make a response video to this entire conversation, not to complain, but to show proper behavior on both sides of the discussion. If not, I won't, but I'm glad to have had this conversation with you, and I'll edit in the message if he approves. If he doesn't, this is all wasted time, but whatever.